My name is Zaid. I'm here to talk to you about scaling happy engineering team. It's some set of guidelines and tools that you can apply in your team and organization to make sure that as you're growing, your engineering teams are happy. A bit about me. I'm an engineering leader with over a decade of experience in building strong teams. I currently lead engineering at Wrapbook. Previously, I was an IC and a manager at GitHub, and before that, I founded my own company at Sandglass. It was actually at Sandglass that I learned Ruby and Ruby on Rails to build the product. It was my introduction to web development. I fell in love with Ruby back then, and I'm still in love with it. And it was learning by jumping in the deep end and learning about Ruby. I'm still in love. I'm very passionate about Ruby and what it brings to the ecosystem. And I hope I can share a little bit of my learnings over the past decade with you to help build and grow happy engineering teams. So before I did this, prepared for this talk, I asked the people around me, what makes an engineer happy? And I got a bunch of answers. By no means are those answers representative of what makes every single engineer happy, but I'm hoping that they're representative of what makes a lot of engineers happy. The number one thing that I heard is having the space to do impactful work, things that make the lives of our customers better, of people's lives better altogether, and having the time and focus to get into the flow of working on that. The other one is getting timely feedback and this ability to learn and grow while we're doing our work, and having great coworkers and mentors to support us in that learning and growth, and also having an organization and a space where your voice can be heard, where you can voice your opinion and feel that people genuinely care to hear what you have to say. And finally, being able to use the best tools for the job in order to accomplish your job. And a couple of notes on working remotely. In my view, it's not very different than working in an office. The biggest difference with working remotely is that you have to make the implicit explicit. Namely, you have to put conscious effort to foster trust. You have to make sure that you're communicating the right information to the right people at the right times and not depending on informal channels for that communication to dissipate in the organization. You want to create space for building relationships. There's no water cooler in remote. There's no coffee machine in remote. You don't just spontaneously meet people and chat with them for 20, 25 minutes while you're walking down the hall. So you need to create spaces, conscious spaces for these relationships to form. The other thing is you want to write things down and you want to communicate them in multiple channels and to accommodate different personalities and communication styles. There's whole books written about remote. I won't go into details of that, but that's in a nutshell what I think of it. I'll talk a little bit about general principles that I like to follow in general when solving any problem. And that applies into making sure that we're building happy organizations. When you're making a change, start small and make sure when you're making that change that you have a built-in feedback loop so that you're able to iterate and improve when things don't go to plan or when they do go to plan and you want to do more of that thing. And by necessity, starting small means that sometimes you're doing things that don't scale in order to learn. And you want to lean on one-on-ones, qualitative conversations first before you do the optimization of automating and delegating later. And there is such a thing as a premature optimization for an organization. And one of the fundamental principles that I like to follow in all of this is that trust comes first. It's the foundation for everything we do. So we want to build trust in everything we do. So you want to implement a change in your organization to make everyone happier and make their lives better. That involves making decisions as a team and as a group. And so I thought I'd start first by talking about how to make decisions, and then move on into the more general principles around building the organization. So when you start small on a team of 2 or 3, it's easy to make decisions by consensus. You talk to each other. It's only a couple of conversations. The decision is done. Works okay. But as the team grows and you start trying to drive decisions by consensus, it becomes harder and harder for decisions to be made until they grind to a halt. So instead of making progress on our goals, we end up in endless meetings and endlessly trying to push things forward and trying to get consensus from and buy-in from everyone in order to move forward. And we end up feeling paralyzed and demoralized because we can't move forward on our ideas. Instead, we want to empower people to make decisions. You want engineers on the team to be able to make decisions without having to get consensus. But that means that they must be able to be accountable to the decisions that they make. They need to know who to consult and who are the people that need to be informed of the decision. And it's okay if there's a disagreement. We need to know also when to disagree and commit. And to make disagreements a bit easier to manage, and to provide a framework for decisions to happen. It's a good practice to provide guidelines for how to do code reviews. What is considered convention at this organization or this company? And what is up to the person who's writing the code or who's making the decision to make? We could have endless discussions about tabs versus spaces, but you could save everyone's time and effort by deciding on one convention and just sticking with it and saying this is how we work in the code base. You also want to provide the framework and guidelines for how technical decisions are made. Do we need a technical design document? What needs to go into it? Do we need to sit in a meeting and walk through it and defend it? And who's the ultimate decision maker when we do have those meetings? Once you have those in place, it becomes a lot easier to actually go through the process. Someone who just joined the company can go through the technical design review process or the code review process as easily as someone who's been there for a long time. And so decision making becomes a lot more streamlined. I want to also emphasize that you never want to penalize mistakes, unless, of course, it's repeated carelessness. But you want to use those mistakes as a learning opportunity. Find the root cause of why that mistake happened. Figure out ways that you can learn from it or mitigate it or avoid it altogether in the future. And use disagreements, especially strong disagreements, as an opportunity to coach. Make sure that all points of view have a space to be heard. Make sure that the trade-offs between different approaches are being documented and we're being explicitly cognizant about them and hearing them out. And there is no such thing as a perfect decision in vacuum. The context matters big time. So understand the context where the decision is being made in, understand the trade-offs between them, and then make a choice, disagree, and commit and move forward if we're not able to come to an agreement. And another important thing that I want to highlight is don't give one person a veto over the whole team. Even if they are right most of the time, if you give someone a veto, the team doesn't learn how to make decisions. And also they learn not to voice their opinions, especially not to oppose that person. And the ability of the team to scale is gone in the process. And you're not able to give people agency and the sense of reward for the decisions that they've made. So now that we know how to make decisions, let's think about how we design our organization, the engineering organization or your company. I like to think of organizations as a product to be designed. And the way you interface with an organization is through the processes and policies and tools that are available in place. And these act as the user interface to the company or the organization that you're working with. And since it's a user interface, you can actually design it. You can actually design your interaction with it, and you can actually fix problems by changing the interactions that are built into the organization. So what if there is a repeated behavior or outcome that is not desirable in your organization? It's actually making you angry every day and you don't know what to do about it. You can actually design that behavior away or that outcome away. You can adjust a process, you can adjust a trigger, or in UI speak or UX speak, an affordance to result in a better outcome. And I'll give you a concrete example here. Let's say in your engineering team, everyone's writing code, but it takes a long time to actually for anyone to review the code, and you have to beg them to do it and carve out time and maybe escalate to a manager to get involved so that the code review happens. Some things you can do, and of course this doesn't apply to every company. You'll need to design it for the specificities around your team. But establish an agreement around what is an acceptable turnaround time for code reviews. Establish who is responsible for driving pull request reviews forward. Is it the PR author? So if the pull request author is the person responsible, then they're responsible for pinging people to make sure that pull request gets reviewed. And instead of tagging the whole organization on the review request, tag a single person so that you don't end up with a bystander effect of, someone from the organization is going to actually review the code, but not a specific person is responsible and accountable for doing so. Roll out these changes and then observe, did anything change? Are we getting better at reviewing PRs? Are we seeing less of them pile up? If not, adjust, talk to people, try to understand what's happening, and then repeat. Another thing that I'd like to highlight in terms of organization design is that you don't want problems to become hidden. Engineers are natural problem solvers. We tend to solve organizational problems, process problems, code problems, customer problems that we see around us. However, sometimes we make the problem invisible to the rest of the organization. I'm pretty sure many of you have heard of, someone who owns a specific part of the engineering process. They're the only one who knows about it, and the organization becomes dependent on them for it. And no one really knows how it came to be that way, but that person solved the problem for the organization, and everyone depends on them for it to be functional. So what that person has done is made a problem not visible to the organization. The pain is not felt by anyone, and the root cause is not fixed as a result. For example, don't try to Review all PRs because no one else is reviewing them for your organization. Actually make the problem visible. Talk about it as an organization and fix it at the fundamental level. Next up is designing the process for how we will deliver software and how will we work. So generally speaking, companies nowadays will follow like an agile process. And there's no such thing as the perfect process. It depends on the problem that you're trying to solve and the work that you're doing. So you want to choose the right process for the appropriate confidence level you have in the work that you're doing. For example, if you're updating a copy on a page, changing a sentence on a landing page on your website, it's easy to estimate how long that's going to take. You look at the time to make the change, commit it, put it into your repo for CI to run, for any testing to happen, and then to deploy it. You can get that with a very high degree of confidence. But if I came to you and said, hey, write me a self-driving car algorithm, I'm not sure how long that would take. There's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of bright minds working on this. We don't know whether the breakthrough is a month from now or a couple of years away or a decade or more away. So for the first type of problem, if you have a rigid process that depends on estimates, it probably will work okay. But for anything that's in between, or maybe as complex as a self-driving car algorithm, it will hinder progress if your process is very rigid and depends on getting your estimates right. So I like to advocate for keeping processes lightweight, flexible to respond to new information. And I will say that being aligned on goals always is better than having a perfect process. Because if you're not aligned on the goals and you're working through the perfect process, you could actually reach a target that's not the right goal for your team or your company or your project. And it doesn't matter that the process was perfect in the process. There are there are a couple of parameters that you can think of in your process. One is the cadence. What is the cadence that you want to operate in? Is it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? And this is again dependent on the project and the type of work that you're doing. How do you scope, set priorities, and set goals for your team? And how do you improve the process and remove friction points from it and improve how you work? So at Wrapbook, we're a SaaS application for entertainment production companies. And for us, we found it's appropriate to have a weekly cadence for us. So we do a weekly goals meeting. We do a weekly engineering and product leads prioritization and scoping meeting to scope the work for us. And we do weekly retrospectives and one-on-ones to provide a feedback loop to improve our process and how we work together. In addition to those, we like to do a daily async stand-up in Slack, and specifically to touch base and make sure we're still aligned. There's a couple of aspects, details to this that I think I'd also like to touch on, which is what is the unit of work? How do you get feedback on that unit of work, and how often do you deploy changes? These are all decisions that also affect your process. So again, from Wrapbook, we like to think of a pull request as a unit of work, generally less than 3 days of work. The reasoning being it's easier to test, it's easier to review when a PR does only one thing and is tightly scoped to 3 days or less of work. And to get feedback on the PR, we have an extensive CI test suite. We have a review app for each pull request for easy feedback from stakeholders. And the code is reviewed by 2 engineers, and typically within 24 hours. We deploy multiple times a day, and we feature flag changes that shouldn't be visible by customers immediately. So how do we build strong teams? Generally, a strong team will get you way farther than a collection of individual superstars. And there's a couple of key behaviors that you want to get on your team for them to be successful. The main one is that you want the team to be focused on results. And each item depends on the one below it for it to happen. So for you to be focused on delivering results, you need to be accountable to delivering those results. And for you to feel accountable to delivering those results, you actually need to be committed to the goals and the goal of delivering a specific result. However, you're not going to feel committed to delivering a specific result, and you're going to push blame to others if you don't feel committed to that goal in the first place. And one reason people don't feel committed to the goal, if they didn't have actually an honest conversation around it, they weren't able to voice their opinion, they weren't able to voice disagreement around the direction and so on. So you need to be able to allow people to have unfiltered disagreements around their ideas. Respectful, but unfiltered. And you want that to be a healthy conflict around ideas and what are the differing opinions that people have on the team. Of course, no one will voice their ideas if they don't trust that it's a safe space for them to voice these ideas and actually talk to people about them and bring them to the table. The other thing, common question that I get around, building teams, if you're breaking down your organization into multiple teams, then this will create silos between the teams. However, smaller teams are very beneficial in that the communication overhead is lower. You're able to align to goals. You're able to onboard people into the problem space much faster. However, you do end up specializing in a very specific area. The solution around that is to make sure that you encourage the idea of first teams. Your first team is your peers, and whether they're reporting to the same manager or in a cross-functional manner of product engineering and design, working closely together. And you're working together towards your organization goals. So in the chart that's showing on the slide, the red circles, the circles of the same color, are all from the same team. So the yellow circles are one team, the pink circles are one team, the green circles are one team, the turquoise circles are one team. And what this means is that we're aligned. For example, if you think of the pink circles as engineering managers, the engineering managers are working together on the company goals. So it's less about my area and I'm trying to protect it, and it's more about how do we work together as a team to solve engineering goals. If there's a customer problem that doesn't fit neatly in a team, in a company that's siloed, managers will try to push the responsibility to other teams in order to focus on their main responsibilities. But if you encourage the idea of first teams, then they'll work together to find a solution to the customer problem. So now that we understand the idea of strong teams, let's talk a little bit about forming new teams. Generally, in a team's life cycle, it goes through different phases. One is forming, when you're just bringing people together to form the team. And they go through a phase of norming. Norming means that people are looking at and observing each other, observing how other people operate and so on, and building some comfort level with each other. Once that comfort level is established, they go into the storming phase where they're able to voice their opinions more openly, and some healthy conflict comes out. And they figure out how to work with each other and come to an agreement on how to work with each other. Once they're there, they get into the performing stage. And that means that the team is performing at their optimal. And finally, if a team is disbanded, you could go into the mourning phase. You're no longer working with those people that you've invested a lot of time working with them. And you can use that framework to try to minimize disruption to an organization. You want to allow teams to go through the forming, norming, storming, and performing cycle in order to get the most out of your organization and out of your teams. So at Wrapbook, we like to split teams to form new ones. We even like to call it mitosis after the biological process. So instead of disrupting the whole organization and disrupting the team formation cycle, we split teams after we overgrow them. So next up is we need to hire up the right people for those teams in order to grow them and form new ones. There's three general tracks that I like to think about. I know some companies lump the IC and technical leadership tracks into one. However, I like to think of them as three distinct tracks. There's an IC track, all the way to senior engineer, and then there's technical leadership track, which might be known in different companies as staff engineer or principal engineer. And then there's people leadership tracks, such as engineering manager or director. And the goal of these tracks is to provide a common language for people to speak about expectations and have a clear understanding of how to transition to different tracks. And to hire the right people, you need to design an interview process mapped to a specific need that you have in the company. So understand the job level that you're looking for and hire for that. So you want to remove bias from the process as much as possible. You want to look for people who are complementary to the strengths of those on the team, and you want to design a process that's respectful of candidates' time. After you hire people, you want to create a repeatable onboarding process. For example, for each new hire, we give them a new onboarding buddy at Wrapbook, and that helps them with answering questions and getting oriented with the team. We also have an onboarding checklist that each new person will actually update so that the next person has a smoother experience when they join. I've gone through a lot in this presentation, but concretely, what can you do today? Whether you're in an IC role, whether you're in a management role or a technical leadership role. I encourage you to reframe thinking about your organization as a system that involves decisions and flows of data. When you see problems in that system, you're debugging it. You already know how to do that as an engineer. And then make sure that the problems that you see in the organization are visible. We call that observability. And remember the general principles. You have to start small, have a feedback loop, iterate on the process. Do things that don't scale to learn, and lean on one-on-ones and conversations first, and then automate and delegate later. A little bit about us at Wrapbook. Wrapbook is built on Ruby on Rails as a monolith. We use Rails and Stimulus for both front end and back end. We try to keep our tech stack simple to have a big impact. We have 5 core values at Wrapbook. We're compassionately direct with each other. We celebrate ourselves and diversity, so we want everyone to bring themselves into the workplace. We like to bias towards action. We want to delight our customers with our product, with every interaction we have with them. And we want people to be accountable for their own work. We want people to feel like they own their work and they take pride in it. We put a lot of care into who we hire. We are looking to work with teammates who are empathetic, curious, excited about building modern software tools for creators. We're hiring for a lot of positions. Be sure to check our career website to look at it. We're hiring for managers, for staff engineers, for platform system engineers, platform software engineers, and product and marketing and sales. We have very competitive benefits. Be sure to check our career website or reach out to me personally if you're interested in a position at Wrapbook. Thank you very much for listening. I'll be around, and others from the team will be around to answer any questions.